Welcome to the Inside Slant Podcast, brought to you by JayhawkSlant.com. Here's the staff from Jayhawk Slant, the online leader in KU coverage since 1999.
Hey everybody, this is Randy Withers. Welcome into another pregame edition of the Inside Slant Podcast from JayhawkSlant.com. While yes, the Jayhawks are taking on Arizona this week in football, we are also going to talk some Kansas Jayhawks men's basketball as well. For that, we have got the full staff in the studio for this one. We've got a great guest lined up as well with Brian Jeffries, the voice of the Arizona Wildcats. He's going to join us to talk about this week's matchup with Lance Leipold's squad. We're also going to get into the game Friday night against North Carolina. Shea was at the press conference yesterday. We're going to hear from him, get his thoughts, and talk a little bit of basketball as college basketball season gets rolling with a big matchup this week. Let's get right into this thing. Let me bring in our man on the men's basketball beat and from the Allen Fieldhouse suite, Mr. Shea Wildeboer. Shea, how are you today?
I'm good, man. How are you guys, brother?
Good to hear from you, man. It's a fun time of year with so much going on. I mean, college basketball, college football, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball just ended with an amazing World Series. I mean, it's a fun time of year right now.
Big game Friday night.
No doubt. Super excited for that one.
But the thing with Kansas basketball is most games are big and there's a lot of them. So you got
That's the beauty of it.
You got to kind of smooth things out and take the hits as they come and yeah, no, but I'm excited, man. I think, the last 2 years haven't started really or ended the way anybody wanted. But I love the makeup of this team and we can get into that. But yeah, exciting times coming up for sure.
And let me go ahead and introduce the publisher of Jayhawk Slant and the man on the Kansas football beat, my good friend, Mr. John Kirby. JK, how are you today?
What's up, boys? How y'all doing?
Good,
Yeah,
man.
just
Ready for a big game.
Hey,
yes.
I want to make sure and say this. I know we did our podcast last week, and we mentioned that Shea wasn't couldn't make that one. Had the death of his uncle, so we just hope we hope everything's going good in the Wildeboer family.
Man,
Yeah.
listen, diagnosed with stage 4 cancer one day and gone 3 days later.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, brain and lung. Wasn't feeling well. Went to his doctor. Doctor said, "Hey, go get some tests run." And you go to the hospital and they scan you, and it was bad. And it's, Uncle Tom was one of those guys that everybody needs as an uncle. He was always there, weddings, graduation, just no matter what. So yeah, so it was a sad occasion. But I'm glad to be back. I think we all need a distraction, and this will be good for me with hoops getting up and ready to roll. So thank you guys. I appreciate that.
That's always a great time, too, to mention. That's the importance of regular visits to your doctor.
Right.
I mean,
Gotta
regular checkups, primary care physicians, regular visits. Go see your doctor once or twice a year. Get
Right.
that stuff checked out because there's so many of these. It's so sad because a lot of them, if you caught them early, it would be a minor procedure and you just go on like nothing ever happened. So
Hey, and then there's guys I know like me, dude. I just avoid the doctors, and then
Right.
I'm married to a neonatal nurse practitioner.
I was going to
So
say that makes perfect sense with you
so
married to.
so finally, I think I was in my like mid 40s, and my wife goes, "You're getting your ass to the doctor." This is, she's like, "This is who you're going to see," and she, because of being in the network and the job she is, she knew a guy there is that I'd like, and she got me hooked up. But I'm just telling you, if it wasn't for her, dude, I'm just one of them guys that just keeps going and going and doesn't get into that stuff and just keeps going. But if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't do it. So
I'm the same way. I hate I hate it. But I've got I go every year before the season. I've done it. I've did the blood work and all that stuff, but it's not something that I enjoy.
hey, I'll tell you guys one. So I try to work out 6 times a week, and I don't know. And I mentioned this on the board too. It was sometime, well, it was earlier this year. I'm like, God, man, my knee, the inside part of my left knee just kills. And I just kept working out through it and everything. And I've already torn my meniscus twice
Ugh.
and had surgery on it. So I'm thinking, God dang it, I think I tore my meniscus. So I keep going on it, and finally they sent me in for an MRI. Here, I don't know what, about a month ago. I can't remember when it was, and they send me in, and the results come back, and I said, was it a torn meniscus? And they go, no, buddy, you don't have any more meniscus to tear. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, your meniscus on that side of the knee is gone. It's you have no
Wow.
meniscus. And so here's the weird stuff. On that side of the knee, they say it's gone. I'm like bone on bone. On my other side, just to the other side of the knee, what the inside's the lateral and the out no, inside's medial and outside's lateral.
Inside's medial, outside
Okay,
lateral.
so the lateral is 100% perfect intact. And I'm like, how do you do that? Only I could do that. But
You had to
anyways,
work really hard
I
to
guess
get
so.
to. I mean, on the bright side, you don't have to worry about tearing your meniscus anymore. I mean,
Right, right. They
you're,
said you have no meniscus to tear, and I was like, oh, is that bad?
all I can think of is like Forrest Gump. Well, that's good. One less thing to worry about.
That's true.
Oh gosh. Well, it's again, everybody listening, regular doctor visits, do that.
Right.
Absolutely do that. Take good care of yourselves. We love all of you. Appreciate you listening. We want to make sure that you keep listening with us. And before we lose anybody else who might be fast forwarding at this point, let's get into some college basketball. Shay,
Go.
I know one of the hot topics that at Bill Self's press conference this week, you were right there in the front row to bring up the name that is on everybody's lips right now, Darryn Peterson. Tell us what's going on with Darryn Peterson, and this guy has been an absolute dynamo from the first second he touched the floor. And yeah, what's the latest with Darryn?
Yeah, it's the battle of the cramps. It's the weirdest thing like ever. Like I know cramps are a thing, but he played 22 minutes or 25 minutes against Louisville and 22 I think 22 against Louisville, 25 against Green Bay, and I think
He's
in
averaging like a point a minute, by the way.
right. Listen, and he played for only 5 minutes. And obviously, they didn't need him against Green Bay, but he only played 5 minutes in the second half. And yesterday, the thing that Coach Self that said that stood out to me was it's concerning. And anytime he says concerning in Darryn Peterson, it's concerning. Listen,
Hmm.
Jesus has invested a ton of resources in this guy. We're in an era of NIL and name and marketing and all that stuff, and there's big money being thrown around. And if you don't get Darryn Peterson at his best, it's I mean it's a travesty, and I hate to use
Hmm.
that for everything we're going on, but yeah, I mean they're going to need him tomorrow night. I mean they're going to need him, and I even said, hey, extended minutes. I said, can you do that? And he said, well, that's 30 to 35 minutes, and that's what they're going to need from him. I mean they're going to walk in tomorrow, and against Louisville, he scored 24 points in the first half. Ended up with 26. I mean, everybody's seen what he can do. Just imagine what he does on extended minutes when he's out there. And I think in
Hmm.
order for the team to reach its peak, to reach its ceiling, whatever you want to, he's got to be out there. I mean, he just has to. So I've heard people say pickle juice. I think banana. I mean, I've heard everything on the board. We've got a bunch of experts, obviously, that need to go to the basketball office, but clearly, I don't like the word concerning because that means that to me, when you're concerned about something, there doesn't appear to be like an immediate fix. Uh,
Exactly.
and Kansas has got some huge games coming up. I mean, some huge games. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll find out tomorrow night, but it's one of those things where you can't just put a band-aid on it and it's better. You've got to experiment with some things. He practiced yesterday and they practiced, I think Coach Self said, the previous night. So he's out there, but how long can they get him out there? And that's going to be a big challenge tomorrow night. It appears, moving forward the rest of the season, at least early on. And
What kind
Brandon,
of
and it's not, and I'm not, don't panic, but it's not good. I mean, it's not because people have seen what he's capable of.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
24 points in the first half against Louisville, 21 points or 22 points against Green Bay, and he only played 5 minutes in the second half. I mean,
Do you expect him to be limited Friday night against North Carolina? And if so, I mean, like
he can't
overall, what kind of test do you expect them to be for KU? But how much do you see Darryn Peterson figuring into that on Friday night?
can't be limited. He can't. I mean, listen, you guys, here's the thing. At some point, Cole Rosario is going to hit shots. There's no doubt about that. I know people on the board are panicked and they're worried. But you got to remember too, he's one game really into his college career. It's going to
Hmm.
happen. And the thing that I love about that is his shot's not falling, but it's not stopping him from impacting the game in other ways. Hustling, rebounding, being aggressive, taking shots when open. So,
I was going to say the guy continues to shoot. That's one of
right.
the big things.
Right. I love what I've seen from Bryson Tiller. That baseline jam, that baseline drive and jam he had against Louisville, something I don't see, I didn't expect. He's a guy that can score inside, outside. I love Melvin Council. He talked early on about being a dog, and I wasn't exactly for sure what that looked like because honestly, Kansas hasn't had that type of player in a few years. He's a
Hmm.
dog. He's last year KU had struggling getting to the free throw line, and this year they got guys that can drive coast to coast, and Peterson and Melvin. So I love this team. I love the makeup of this team, but it's going to be centered around Darryn. Can he play 30 minutes? Listen, North Carolina's got a freshman, Caleb Wilson, a 6'10" big man, um, that in the season opener, a 40-point win um, over Central. I'm sorry, Central Arkansas scored 22 points, was 8 of 10 from the field, 1 of 1 from the behind the arc, 5 of 6 from the free throw line, 3 assists, 1 block, 1 steal in 24 minutes. So kind of Darryn Peterson type numbers. Like Carolina's going to be amped up tomorrow. They're going to be ready to go. Last year was a big game. KU got out to an early lead and had to hold on for the victory. But they've got 5 guys averaging in double figures. So it's going to be, and they just got a foreign player eligible. He was deemed eligible by the NCAA. Then the North Carolina had to clear him, and so yeah, they're going to need Darryn Peterson at his best. They're going to need Marco Jackson, who Coach Self said yesterday was basically a sixth starter, first guard off the bench. They're going to need him. They're going to need Flory, and I was concerned really after that performance against Fort Hays State because you can't struggle against Fort Hays State if you're Flory Badunga. You just
Exactly.
you can't. He's going to have to play big tomorrow. So yeah, it's going to be a real challenge. But I think if Darryn Peterson's at his best, if Kansas is kind of clicking on all cylinders, and listen, they win it. This won't be something really new to them as far as this season. They went to Louisville. They played in front of a sellout crowd. It was a big crowd, a top 10 team, and really even without Peterson, handled the Cardinal. I don't remember Louisville making a run in the second half, but I also know that this is different. This is a regular season game, and really one guy has experience in a big game at Kansas, and that's Flory. So how's Darryn going to react? And that's, to me, that's not really a concern because he's at a different level. I read an article today saying that many believe that he could have been playing in the NBA last year. But how's Melvin going to respond? How's Trey White going to respond? And by the way, early on, I know Trey's kind of been hit and miss, but again, I love what I've seen from him. He's kind of like that Swiss Army knife guy, which what he talked about. How's Cole going to respond?
Hmm.
How's Marco going to respond? If there's foul trouble with Flory, who's going to step up? Can Bryson play that role? So it's early, you guys. A loss tomorrow means nothing. It means nothing in the grand scheme of things. But it's a chance for Kansas to really get off to a good start this season and do something which they've struggled to do the last 2 years, which is win on the road. They gotta. You can't let things snowball out of control and not respond because they're going to face some adversity. But I think I read in today's notes that Kansas has won the last 5 games against Carolina. Obviously they've had their number. Coach Self has had great success against the Tar Heels. Most of that coming in the NCAA tournament. But yeah, I expect if Darren's on tomorrow and playing extended minutes, that it's going to be a great game.
You know, looking ahead to the future and talking a little bit of recruiting, you helped break the news of the recent commitment of shooting guard Luke Barnett. Tell us a little bit about Luke and what does he bring to Bill Self's squad? What's his commitment mean?
Right, and I love this. And you, Andy, you can relate. Kansas fans have seen that guy either in the conference or in the tournament that just absolutely scorches them.
Yep.
That one guy
Burns the nets up by
burns,
himself.
burns, and you're scratching your head, and you can do nothing but shrug like the Jordan shrug.
All you can do is say, why can't we get a guy like
Right.
that?
That's the guy. Now
Yep.
he's going to say, and other people are going to say that he can score, he can get to the basket, he's got the mid-range game. I've had several people tell me describe him as a specialist, as a sniper, um, and like a knockdown shooter. A
I
guy
like
that
all these words.
right,
All of
right,
those are good words,
right,
Shay.
right, specialist. And that's not being disrespectful. People look at Darryn Peterson and he's a 3 level guy, an NBA number 1 pick. They all can't be like that.
Exactly.
Got to have guys that can come off the bench early on and then work their ways into the starting lineup. And he's a guy that if you're down or if you've got a chance to really crack a team on the road, you get him in the game and you let him do his thing. He's a
Mhm.
specialist. For 55 points one game last year. I think he had holds the school record, had 10 or 12 threes, and he's a guy that can light it up. Coming off screens, um, pulling up from behind the arc, and his range is limitless. I mean, he can score from anywhere. So it's you look at it and you're like, don't be eh. I mean, this is a guy that, um, man, from behind the arc, Kansas fans are going to get a taste of what it's like to have a guy that's burned them so many times. And you need that. I remember like Tyrell Reed hitting big shots. Nobody was really excited. Or Brady Morningstar hitting big shots, kind of playing with that edge, that swagger, and he's going to bring that to this team. Um, I don't think he likes the idea of just being called a sniper or one of the top shooters in the class or whatever, but that's what he is. He's got a chance to be one of those guys that ends games.
Can he be, and this is, I know these are big expectations here. There's a big shadow orb I'm about to mention. Is he a Christian Brown type?
Oh God, that's a lot. Well, I mean,
Because
similar.
that, you
I
want to
mean,
talk about dog that could hit
right,
shots.
right.
That
I
dude
don't
threw
know.
daggers.
Right. Christian's ability, the thing I loved about him is he wasn't just a shooter. I mean, he could get to the cup, he could dunk, and he played with a different level of, I don't want to say anger, but he just
He
had that
played
fire.
mean. You're
Right.
not wrong.
Right. And you guys, if you remember his last year here, every time he would hit a big shot or dunk, he would end it with a word. I'm not going to say the
Oh
word.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
We all
Against
know what the word
right.
was.
And I remember sitting front row in the national championship game against Carolina and him turning to kind of our side of the court and yelling it. He was a different cat. Listen, I mean, he didn't care. Like most guys would be like, hey, I'm not, I don't know how coach, but and I asked Coach Self about it after the season, just between the eye, and he said he loved it because he had that
Mhm.
fire that burned, that passion. So I don't know if early on if Luke will be that way, but listen, he's a guy that's going to have an opportunity to hit a ton of shots, and you got to have that. Like you're on the road, you're playing K State, you're up three with 50 seconds to go, timeout, you run a play for him, comes off a screen, boom. All of a sudden you're up six, you've taken 10 seconds off the clock, and that's a huge difference.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a
That would
you got
be
time
that's
score,
exciting to know that we might
right,
have a weapon like that on the horizon.
right. Time score momentum, as coach says, and yeah. So I think I look at his ranking, and I know it's not exciting. You guys, he's a specialist. There's something he's been brought to do at Kansas, and I expect him to do it extremely well. Now, first game, if they open it up against Duke next year, I don't know what the schedule looks like, or if they're at Connecticut or whatever. You need to be patient. You need to ease up a little bit depending on who comes back, who else they sign, who comes in the portal. But yeah, he's a guy that's will have the potential or opportunity to win some games for Kansas. No doubt about it. He's a guy you gotta have because right now, I mean, Randy, they struggle to shoot from behind the arc, and I know we're one game in. I know we don't know what the future looks like, but I mean, there's guys on this team that can shoot, but you don't necessarily have a guy you can look at and say, get him the ball. Where Kansas is down three, they need a shot. Obviously Peterson, but if not Peterson, then who? I mean, Jaden Dawson struggled a little bit. Trey White hasn't hit a ton of shots. I don't know if Melvin's even taken any. I think Jamar McDowell's maybe hit a couple, but you got to have guys that are playing 32, 35 minutes a game that when you need to hit a big shot can hit them. And I expect at some point Luke will kind of take on that role as a sniper.
Love it. Love it. That's our man Shea Wildeboer on the men's basketball beat. Shea, as always, we appreciate you dropping in. Can't wait for Friday night, man.
All right, you guys have a good one.
That's Shea Wildeboer from the Allen Fieldhouse Suite. Now we're going to switch gears and talk some Kansas Jayhawks football with our man John Kirby. JK, homecoming win over Oklahoma State, fifth win of the season. This was it was kind of a get right game against an opponent maybe coming at exactly the right time. Let's look back at this one. Tell me what you thought about the win over the Cowboys.
Yeah, it was a get right game. It didn't feel like a get right game in the first half, Randy.
No,
It's
it did
it was
not.
a weird beginning to that game. I mean, KU had two possessions in the first half. Like that reminds you of something like I was getting ready to say like an Army Navy game, but that's not true because Army and Navy, they know how to play each other. So there's punts in that game because they both
Mhm.
know how to play the flex bone and the option. But it reminded you of a game where teams go on these long drives, and next thing you know, you look up in the halves there. Yeah, Randy, I'm gonna tell you this. I went back and watched that game, and I posted this on the message board. The biggest play and the biggest 20-second stretch of that game came at the end of the first half. Okay. Flores, the quarterback from Oklahoma State, when you go back and look at it, it looks like he's headed toward the end zone. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, all right, Oklahoma State's going in with the lead at halftime here. And I think it was Bengali Kamara, and I can't remember who else was on the tackle. They knocked him out right at the 2-yard line. Okay. So you're thinking, all right, does Oklahoma State have nothing to lose here? And they go for it on fourth and, or I can't, goal to goal with just seconds to go and take the lead because you got nothing to lose when you're Oklahoma State. Or do you kick the field goal? Well, they said we're going to kick the field goal. Well, what happens? Leroy Harris blocks the field goal. Okay. Now Oklahoma State, and I talked to some people about this. Oklahoma State, those kids go in, they're hanging their heads. They're like, man, we just played with Kansas on the road the entire half, and they go in trailing now. It changed the complexion of the game because, I mean, even if Flores doesn't get in and they make the field goal, you're 10-10. You're
Mm-hmm.
tied up at halftime, and there's things you can sell the kids on. And I've heard from people I've talked to, those kids at Oklahoma State, they haven't had a lot of good happen. So here they go to the locker room, kind of like they're snake bitten. They
Yeah.
just played as well as they could, and they're trailing. And
Mm-hmm.
then KU comes out, and you could see Oklahoma State. A lot of the wind went out of their sails. I mean, KU comes out and goes score, 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 and then that game's over with. So,
Yep.
I just, I think KU fans, they want to see the team that came out in the second half, right? Not the team that maybe played in the first half. So, listen, the big thing in that game also was getting Highshaw and Leshawn Williams back at the same time, healthy. You saw what the running game looked like. Zabrowski, they've added an extra blocker. It was mainly Nolan Gorsica, so they went with 6 offensive linemen and another 300-pound guy in there to block, and I think that guy helped open some holes. So
No doubt.
first half was a little sluggish. I know people were on the edge of their seats going, what's going on here? I thought defensively, God, just a little bit soft coverage and some lapses there. I mean, the kid from Oklahoma State's not really thrown the ball well, but he goes for a career high, and he looks like friggin' Dan Marino in the first half. But I mean, they bottom line is KU came out, responded, pulled away with a win that never was really in question. But I think we all like the second half Jayhawks better than what we saw in the first half.
No question. All right, let's get into this thing. Looking ahead to the Arizona Wildcats, we're going to get a great scouting report from our next guest. Brian Jeffries is the voice of the Wildcats. He visited with Kirby to talk about the matchup with Arizona and tell us a little bit more about this week's opponent.
To get a closer look at Saturday's game between Arizona and KU, we're going to be joined by legendary broadcaster Brian Jeffries. He's been covering the Arizona sports scene there since 1986. Brian, I know you've been a busy man these days. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Glad to, John. I always look forward to a big game on Saturday, and in particular because these two teams have not played one another in like forever. So it's going to be kind of fun seeing Arizona and Kansas.
All right, before I get in the game, just tell me what it's been like. You were out in Boulder for a big win, and then a quick turnaround to the big win over Florida in basketball. What's the last few days been like for you?
Yeah, pretty crazy. I mean, that was a game against the Buffaloes in Boulder that Arizona really needed. You could say that every week, but that their current situation, they were 4-3 going into that ball game, 1-3 in the conference, and Colorado's been struggling. So Arizona had a bye week going in, and I think that it was very important to get a win there for a lot of reasons, this season in particular. And so they got it done. They played really well from start to finish. And then on to Las Vegas to open the basketball season, and it was a great atmosphere at T-Mobile Arena, and you've got two top 25 teams, the defending national champion, and Arizona fell behind by 12 in the first half, came back to win it, and just about as good an opening game as you could ever ask for. And so we're always excited for basketball season around here, and this year's no exception.
So I was watching Brennan's press conference the other day, and it seems like there's a lot of importance on this Kansas game. I know it's homecoming. They said there's a lot of former players coming around. He mentioned he's been out to a bunch of the fraternities and sororities talking about getting people there. Just kind of talk about the effort they're putting into this game, and what's this game mean for them?
Well, of course, one of the goals is to get to a bowl game. That's probably true for every team, and for Arizona, that's especially true right now because they set at 5 wins. They've got 3 games left, actually 4 games left. Kansas, they go to Cincinnati, Baylor at home, and then up at Arizona State for the rivalry game to end the season. And so, they want to get to a bowl game. That's just one of their goals. It's a great opportunity to get their 6th win this week. You're at home. You want to take care of your home field. And so, after you have to go back a couple of weeks, John, they dropped 2 heartbreaking games, double overtime at home to BYU. They had a 10-point lead in that bowl game, couldn't hold it. Then they go down to Houston and lose on a last-second field goal. So bouncing back and beating Colorado was very important. And now I think trying to get some momentum going towards the bottom half of the schedule this week is big. And homecoming's always a part of it. Even though the current players really don't have much to do with it. It's just an idea that you want to win a home game. And the other part, John, I think you kind of alluded to there when Coach Brennan was talking about going around and trying to rally the troops in terms of the fans. Attendance has not been as good as they'd hoped for this season. 2 home games left, and I know they would love to see either a full house or very close to it this week.
Obviously watching them, the offense starts with Fafita at quarterback, but just talk about overall what they've looked like and who are maybe some of the other players that have made them go as well.
Yeah, Noah's having an outstanding season. You go back 2 years ago, and he kind of burst onto the scene and had a great finish in 2023, completed 72% of his passes. And then last year, quite frankly, he took a step back individually in terms of his passing efficiency. One thing Brent Brennan did this year, he changed coordinators, all 3 of them. And so Seth Dagey came in from Marshall as the offensive coordinator, and that's made a difference. It started in spring ball. I think Seth did some outstanding things with Noah in terms of changing his release time, release point, his footwork, etc., and it's paid off. And Noah's also a guy that's been around now. This will be his, I believe, his 30th consecutive start against Kansas. And so he's got some experience under his belt. He is the acknowledged team leader. So he's been very good. They added depth to their wide receiver core. They lost a great one, of course, last year. Tetro McMillan was a first-round NFL draft pick. But now they've added more depth there. They brought in a transfer from Washington State and Chris Hudson, a transfer from Tennessee Chattanooga in Nunu Watley, who's leading them in receiving. Trey Spivey, a transfer from Kansas State. Luke Weissong, a transfer from New Mexico. And all 4 of those guys, along with the returning and Chris Hunter, have given Noah a lot more targets to work with this year. So that's been important. They've also upgraded their running backs. They brought back Kedrick Reesino, but they've added Ismail Mahdi, a transfer from Texas State, Quincy Craig, a transfer from Portland State. I keep saying transfer, but you know what it's like, John. That's the world we live in right now. And so those guys have made a big difference, and I think that's why the offense has made a big step forward.
Well, if you asked me about Kansas, I would keep telling you transfer. So you're right. That is kind of where we're at. I wanted to move over to the defensive side because that maybe is the story right now. When you look at Arizona, I mean, I've seen they've jumped like 100 spots since last year in total defense, and the statistical improvements have been off the charts. Just talk about how do they do that? How do they do that? And again, who are some players that make them go there?
Well, the reason they've done it, and I will certainly, the players get a lot of credit, but Danny Gonzalez came in as the defensive coordinator. He is a protege of Rocky Long. He's been a head coach at New Mexico before. He is a fiery guy, and he has really made that defense what it is. They are a very aggressive defense, I'll tell you that. They may not lead the world in sacks, but that doesn't mean that they're not aggressive. He has the guys. He likes a team that is very physical. He even says violent at times in a good way, and it's paid off. Now, the secondary returning, we knew it was going to be good because most of those guys are back from a year ago, and they're led by Dalton Johnson, their redshirt senior safety who leads them in tackles. But they've got some other guys that have really stepped up. Deshaun McKnight transfer from UT Martin has really made a difference this year. Traden Stukes, who was hurt last season, played only 4 games and had a slow start this year. He has really come on now as one of the defensive backs. Chase Kennedy coming off an excellent game up at Colorado as a return guy that's helped, even though he started his career at Utah, second year now with Arizona. And I could go on from there. They've got a lot of depth now, and they've really improved their defense just in terms of the way they attack. And so Danny Gonzalez has made a huge difference. The one thing that they had struggled at through a couple of games, in particular in those losses to BYU and that was at home, of course, and at Houston, was stopping a dual threat quarterback. They just, for some reason or another, they had a difficult time stopping quarterbacks that can run. That's going to be a huge emphasis this week because Jalen Daniels has that ability, and so I know they're working on it a lot in practice this week.
All right, a big game for both teams. Both are trying to get bowl eligible. Well, what do you think about the matchup?
Well, that's it's interesting from Arizona's viewpoint, and I'd say the same thing about Kansas. I mean, these teams are in the same conference, but it's their first time meeting as Big 12 foes, and so sometimes, John, as you got that history between teams, and you kind of get a feel for what they're like. And if they would have played the last couple of years, you'd have a different, I think, perspective on it. So it's to me, there's a lot of questions, a lot of mystery. You can look at film, you can look at the statistics, and you can see, okay, how do they match up? But without that history between the two, to me, it's kind of tough. I think for Arizona, they've got to play efficient football. They've got to be able to run the ball. We know that Noah's had an excellent year passing the ball, but they've got to establish the run game. And I'll go back to what I mentioned a moment ago. They cannot allow Jalen Daniels to, use his legs to his advantage, because that has just been an area that Arizona has had a tough time with defensively this year. So after that, John, I don't know what to tell you. I just think, hopefully, I love it from our perspective as broadcasters. We just like to have an exciting, close game, and I think it has all the makings of exactly that.
That's great stuff from Brian Jeffries. He's the longtime voice at the University of Arizona. And Brian, I know you're very busy, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to join us.
Well, glad to, and this is it's great to see this rivalry start now. And I think we knew already that there was going to be a great rivalry in basketball between Arizona and Kansas. So now I'm looking for football and see how this first game between the two teams goes.
That was Brian Jeffries, who handles all the play-by-play duties for the University of Arizona. And man, he brought some really good information about this matchup and about their squad as we gear up for Saturday. Kirby, I don't think I'm overstating here. This is a big game for both teams. Both squads are trying to become bowl eligible. This is a really interesting matchup. Let's get into this thing. How do you see this one coming down?
Yeah, Randy, you're right. It's a hard game to read. I think I saw this morning that, it looks like the people betting on the game are betting on Arizona laying the 4.5. That's where the money's coming in. But boy, I'll tell you, interesting game. And Arizona's a different team to me. I've watched them play about 2.5 games, okay? And I watched them lose to BYU in overtime. I watched them beat K-State on a Friday night game. And I mean, in the second half of that game, they just blitzed the bejesus out of Avery Johnson. I think they blitzed on every play in the second half.
They were coming from everywhere in that one.
Oh, they were. And then against Colorado last week, I watched a half of that game, and that's all I needed to see. And what I took away from that game is I couldn't tell how good Arizona was because they built a huge lead by half, but good God, Colorado was bad. I mean, in the end, I think Colorado turned the ball over like 5 times, and they didn't tackle, and Arizona's receivers broke a few tackles, a bunch of long runs. So, Arizona does some good things offensively, Randy, that are concerning. They have receivers, a group of them. And Jeffries, you just heard him talk about this, but when I watched him, there's 3 or 4 guys that can make plays in the receiver game. Fafita is a good quarterback. He's solid. I was just looking at his PFF scores. They're pretty good. Something interesting, when he gets blitzed, his percentage and scores dropped drastically. And I'll tell you one reason is, they say he's only about 5'9", 5'10". So I'm wondering, if you're bringing pressure, if he has trouble seeing over it or reacting. So
That's what it seems like.
yeah, so they got a couple running backs that are solid, a good offensive line. I don't know that I look at the running backs and say, man, they're just better than anything that KU has seen this year. Defensively, like I said, they're going to blitz. They're physical, but I do think this too. I think that KU, I think they're going to go into this game saying, we're going to run. We're going to run the football. And we're going to run it to open up some passes for Jalen Daniels. Arizona does play a lot of more tighter coverage because I think they're going to dedicate a lot of resources to stopping KU's run. After you saw Oklahoma State and KU ran for over 200 yards and they used that sixth blocker, I don't think there's any doubt what KU's game plan will be going into this. So the concern for me, Randy, in this game is it's a big game for both teams. I mean, Arizona's trying to rebound after a bad year last year. KU's trying to get back to a bowl after a disappointing season last year. Either team can win this game. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think Arizona matches up pretty well with KU. Arizona's playing at home, and you heard me ask Brian in his segment. I watched Arizona's coach in his press conference, and he said he's been out and talked to a bunch of people in the fraternities and the sororities there, telling them, get to our homecoming game. They've got some former players coming back. There's been a lot of emphasis on get out there and support the team. So I think right now, and I've gone back and forth on this game, but I think I finally settled in on this. I just think with Arizona playing at home, they've got an edge there. I think the fact that they've got a little bit of momentum and they've got something to play for, as do the Jayhawks. Right now, Randy, I'm leaning Arizona. I've got the Wildcats 31, Kansas 28. Let me hear yours.
I am still really struggling with how to pick this game. I'm with you. I think it's going to be close. I think the betting line, that 4 points that you mentioned, I mean, that's where I kind of keep coming back to. I have the number that actually popped into my head a few days ago. I just keep coming back to it. I keep thinking this one's going to be 28-24 Arizona. I don't know what it is. I just have kind of the same feeling that you do. I think that KU is going to definitely have opportunities in this game, but the thing that concerns me is the play, as everyone has talked about it on the boards, and it takes no genius to point out the issues we've had in the secondary. I'm not sure if we can fix those. KU needs to, having both Highshaw and having both running backs healthy, I think helps a lot. I think they can do some things to potentially shorten the game. I think going on the road and what is a big spot is, I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I see this one going 28-24 Arizona. I'm hopeful that we will see Lance Leipold and the boys prove me wrong, prove you wrong as well. But it's going to take a heck of an effort, that is for sure. That will do it for another edition of the Inside Slant pregame podcast from jayhawkslant.com. Gearing up for big KU North Carolina game on Friday night, KU Arizona on Saturday in football. Big weekend for Jayhawk Nation. Enjoy it. Rock Chalk. We'll talk with you again soon.
This has been a podcast from jayhawkslant.com.